Hello, everyone, and welcome to our pre-match show. We will be pre-matching, talking about the tactics, the players, the lineups, and what we expect as Liverpool take on Nottingham Forest at Anfield this afternoon. At the end of the dreaded international break, thank God football is back. Richard makes us know it's called football. Richard, that will be the last comment that comes up on screen from you today. Because if you haven't picked up on it yet, when you insult the hosts and the people on the show, they are not quick to respond to you, or maybe they're even quicker to respond to you. So Richard is on to something. But like everybody else, we appreciate Richard and all the other viewers that come in. So each and every week we do this. We do our pre-match shows. Let's go around the horn here. Say hi to everybody. John, how are we doing, my friend?
Good, good. I didn't know it was a Saturday. I had to verify before we started. So, yeah, I can pretty much says it all, really. But, yeah, I'm hyped. As Kazi said, I wanted to get this whole thing started. I'm ready. I'm ready, man.
Awesome, awesome. And we will get to some things you love to talk about shortly and quickly into this program. So, Sir Z, what is it, like 6 a.m. wherever the hell you are? How are you doing, my friend? How are you faring with the fires out in California before we get to the stuff that doesn't really matter?
We're good, thanks, Gaddy. The fires haven't really affected us personally. Has affected some of our friends, and they're stuck up in Lake Arrowhead in the mountains. But it's cooling down here, so hopefully it's going to die down soon. But yeah,
Awesome.
other than that, it's good to be back. International break's over. Waste of freaking time, but yeah.
Kazi, that's our resident scouser on panel. I know exactly how much you love the international break because it's a reason for you to take a break from watching football, recharge, and or root for England to lose. All things that make you happy. How are you doing out in Nevada today?
I'm good, brother, yeah, but you have nailed it all in one there, really. I don't mind an international break, I'm all right with it. Like, I like a little weekend off, you know what I mean?
I will say it was refreshing to wake up last week and get a few things done, not get yelled at for basically watching TV for the first 4.5 to 5 hours of the day. It was refreshing. And joining us for his pre-match debut, Salim, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. I'm actually out in Denver, so I'm with Cersei and Kazi, just not as far back in time. It's 7 o'clock here. I got a new puppy. I got a 5-year-old who had a meltdown last night, so just ready to go. Get the day started.
I can fully imagine.
He's in
Between
one
the
of those
puppy and
time
the meltdown.
zones. He's in one of those time zones that don't exist. It's either
Yeah, exactly.
and nothing else in between.
Yeah,
On this
exactly.
program, it's Eastern or Pacific, one or the other. Everything else in between is just letters that confuse people.
Doesn't exist, yeah.
We got
and
Mountain
then we get,
Standard Time. What is that?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
we got Sparky Parky who rolls in when he's not overseas, gallivanting on sailboats across the Mediterranean. He comes in from Arizona, and I never know which of the 4 time zones in the state of Arizona he lives in, because it's the only state where you can take a drive and end up in 2 different time zones. But speaking of taking a trip down a lane that is sometimes crazy, we're going to talk a little bit here about our Discord channel. For those of you who don't know, we do have a Liverpool community. We welcome everyone that is viewing right now to join it. I'm going to post the link right now. If you are going to watch today's match by yourself, I strongly recommend jumping in. By all accounts, you may jump out by 1 o'clock once you realize what happens when Bickler and Kazi start to disagree. But it's high comedy and it's high energy. And really, it's a really good community. So if you do watch matches by yourself, this is a way to feel like you're in a pub, even if you're sitting on your couch. I mean, I feel like I'm sitting in the pub when I'm sitting on my couch because regardless of time, I usually have a couple beers in front of me. But we're going to get right to it. I'll post the link right now.
No puns about Ronaldo, by the way.
Before we get into today's lineups, I did want to touch on one thing. We've got some new contributors helping us out with some graphics. You're going to see a lot better stuff coming from us recently. And because John was on today, I thought we would quickly start with a brand new graphic that was made for us. And it's John's man, right? And I figured
Let's go.
At this point, if we were going to make a debut graphic, it should probably be Gravenberch because he's been one of the standout players of the season. And, Kazi, I'm going to start with you on this one. We both were critical at times last year of his play, where he'd fit in this formation. We were critical that he didn't come back early after not kicking a ball at the Euros. He has seemed to bed right in. But where I want to start with you is, should we have any concern by a fourth straight match with zero rotation, specifically in the midfield, when you talk about McAllister, Gravenberch, and Stovacek? Is Slot maybe, just maybe, putting a little bit too much pressure on these players too early, especially with the big Champions League and midweek matches coming thick and fast in the next 2 weeks?
Personally, I hate the team. I do hate it. Like, I hate that he hasn't rotated. You got 7 games in 22 days. The manager kind of alluded to it in his actually post-match press conference, where he said he's used to basically just starting the same 11. Like, and he'll try and figure this out along the way, which I understand. He's a new manager. He's going to make mistakes. No one's perfect, and managers make mistakes every single day. But it does seem naive to me that if you can't trust the other players to come in for Forest at home, when can you get them in? When can you get them started? Do you know what I mean? You know, I know you got Bournemouth at home next week. There's 2 ways of looking at it, and I think the manager might go the other way here. When I was having a think, he might just think if we win the next 2 league games, we'll see where Arsenal are. And that's completely fine to think like that as well, because Liverpool playing Forest at home and Bournemouth at home, and they're playing Spurs away and City away. There's definitely an argument if you just win your next 2 games, Arsenal could be out of this. Do you know what I mean? It's a shootout between City. And I understand if that is the manager's thinking. Of course, the manager would never say if it is. I understand that bit as well. Just win the next 2 and worry about the rest later. Your Champions League game is Milan away. San Siro, we understand what it's like, but they haven't won a game this season, which is another thing where he's probably like, well, can these go again? Win the AC Milan game, win Bournemouth, and then just rest for West Ham, and then just basically have a full, you know what I mean? The manager doesn't think game by game. The manager thinks 3 or 4 games in blocks. He has to think where he's going to get lads minutes. But there's good lads on the bench. I would have done Jones, personally, for McAllister. I don't know when you get McAllister breaks. That's just the one I definitely would have done. I would have looked at Kwanzaa for Kanate. I would have looked at Simicast for Robbo. I would have looked at it at least. So, but going back to Gravenberch, I mentioned this yesterday on the morning show. He's actually taking an opportunity. And when I say that, I mean, let's get it right. Liverpool were very close to signing Zubimendi, and he wouldn't have been playing football for Liverpool. He definitely wouldn't be starting games. And by the looks of it, he wouldn't have been playing football because the manager doesn't rotate. So it would have been Zubimendi and McAllister. I think we're all probably honest to say that that's what it would have been. So what he is doing is providing the manager, first of all, a very, very good solution. But he's also providing the club a very good solution in terms of Liverpool won't sign a defensive midfielder if Gravenberch maintains this level. I wouldn't want them to sign a defensive midfielder, by the way. He's the perfect age profile. He's a great size. I love his physique. I love his ability on the ball, the way he's playing. The one thing I would say is, though, of course, is that it's a very small sample size. It's 3 games. Now we're in the business end of 7 games in 22 days. This is your business end now. You've had your little pre-season. You've warmed into this new role. You know exactly what the manager wants out of you. You've been learning this role once a week because he's had 5 days off with them to train this role and kind of get you up to this role. But now the business end starts. I think he can do it. I do think he can do it for the whole season. I really do. I think he can be a player for Liverpool. It's on him. But I'm just so happy that young players who get given opportunities take them. It's really exciting for me. I always go back to the Trent and Klein situation. When Klein gets injured and Trent comes in and goes, well, you're not playing ever again for Liverpool. I quite like that. Do you know what I mean? And I hope Gravenberch then goes to the club in the summer and goes, well, I'm number 6 now, and Zubimendi or Tchouameni and Lavia and Kaiser all gone.
Didn't need him.
I'm your 6.
Yeah.
6-7 years, and Liverpool can concentrate on other positions.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you guys there. We'll go to the lineup, bring it up on screen. It is unchanged, so we should be familiar with it. I know there's a lot of conversation in the chat. We'll get to some of those as we talk through this. Predictions, where the rotation should have happened. John, let's start with you. I'll take you off the midfield because I'm afraid the program will go right up to kickoff if I ask you about Gravenberch. But let's go with the back line. Kazi makes a good point. I thought we might see the kid Kwanzaa reinstated to the lineup here for some rotation. I do understand, I guess, if Nottingham Forest's number 1 target is going to be Chris Wood, and you took the kid off because of, the Delap kid was bullying him around, maybe you don't send him out there to play against Chris Wood in his first match at Anfield, though I think it would be kind of a way for him to reinforce himself. I could see him starting midweek, and we'll talk a little bit about what we think AC Milan and Champions League. But, John, what are your thoughts on a completely unchanged back 5? I know they've kept 3 clean sheets in a row.
Yeah.
Robertson plays so many minutes every time he goes on international duty, and they're not just regular minutes, they're captain and, heavy minutes, as I like to call them, on older legs. Was Robertson the player that you first thought might get a rest in this match, or did you expect it to be unchanged at the back?
Last Wednesday I predicted 2 changes at the back, and one of those was Simicast, as you mentioned, and the other one was Kanate for Kwanzaa. Although it does make sense, with Chris Wood at the set piece threat for Forest, that they would keep him in there. But then, listen, there's 2 ways to look at this for me. It's like going with what's worked over the last 3 games. Again, small sample size, but then 3 wins, no goals conceded. Can't argue with that. But at the same time, you got to think forward. Like, you got to think in games. And for me personally, that starting off our tough Champions League group with a win was paramount for me. So trying to give the absolute best team midweek for Milan was kind of paramount for me. And I kind of touched on that on the Wednesday show. Granted, Milan aren't doing their best, to start the season. So we might have enough to actually get a decent result there, even if we do rotate. But then, I would have liked to see a few names here and there, Curtis Jones being one of them, especially since he's actually fit enough to get into the bench right now. McAllister has played a ton of minutes, as Kazi kind of touched on earlier. And, he's due a break. Like, give the man a break. Like, listen, he's a top-class player, but then we don't want a Fabinho situation where we're running him into the ground at age 28, or something like that. I know we're not touching on the front line, but I would have liked to see Nunez and Gakpo as well in this game, honestly, because at which point are you going to play Darwin Nunez, right? If not,
I think he's going. I hate to say it. I think he's going to start on Tuesday in the Champions League, to be honest, because I think Slot is going. He's going to rotate. He's not playing the same lineup on Tuesday. We'll get to that. I know. I understand your fears. He's not going to play Jota 3 times or twice in 4 days. He's not going to do it. He shouldn't do it. It would be criminal. Maybe you play Gakpo, but then you're playing Diaz coming off 120 minutes in flights back and forth from South America. So we'll worry about Champions League in a minute. Sergi, I'll ask you, do you think the fact that the Champions League format has been changed, that it's now 8 matches, it's more matches, there are a few of the lower hanging fruits, and maybe they're thinking, to Kazi's point, AC Milan's not playing their top football right now. Maybe we're catching them at a time when you want to catch them. I want to put that pressure on Arsenal before they even kick a ball tomorrow, and maybe even City a little bit, playing, today against a weird Brentford team that can play a 0-0 for 80 minutes, and then Mbeumo can pop up and score a goal, or they can score 2 in the first half. City will roll this game. We know that. But I do think they're trying to put some pressure on these teams. Do you think the Champions League format change, and knowing it's not mission critical maybe to get a win in your first matchup if you put in a good result in a performance on the road in Italy, do you think that has anything to do with how the manager is preparing, or do you think he's literally saying, I'm going to play my best side in the Premier League, make sure we stay on maximum points, and we'll worry about the 8 matches over the next 3-4 months worth of time in the Champions League?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think I don't mind this team. I think the first game back from break and just going all out for the 3 points. On paper, obviously, physically, obviously, we don't know what these players are looking like, but we just have to trust Slot and his team that none of the players are like showing any fatigue or whatever. I think personally, I'm not worried about AC Milan. And I think that's what it is. I think it's kind of a buy game. Like I think we'll go there, and we've got the luxury of having, even with that bench, we have the luxury of beating a lot of teams, even with players coming off that bench with Kwanzaa, Gakpo, Nunez, and even Chiesa. I'm surprised Chiesa's not on the bench, to be honest with you, today. So the optimist part of me is saying like, I think Slot's just like, he knows what he's doing 100%. Like he's just going for it, like a win today, and that's what that matters. The pessimist part of me thinks that it smacks of naivety, and I don't think he actually realized just how fast the Premier League game is and how much toll it takes on our players. But I guess that's why we're here and he's over there and he's making the decisions. But at the end of the day, if we win and keep a clean sheet, it's all good, right?
Yeah, you could call it naivety. I mean, naivety. At the same time, Klopp didn't rotate for years at times, and then would play the same lineup in Milan, and then would play the same lineup next Saturday, and we'd all say, well, this is what he does, this is how he does it. And they were playing a more aggressive, more, running, more attack-minded football at times. And so I think either way, I think calling it naive, I think is too much. I do think he has to learn. I think to Kazi's point, he needs to trust his squad. I don't know that he does yet. Salim, when you look at this team and you look at that bench, would you have rotated any of these players in? And of those 7 players on the bench, how many of them do you think realistically might start either in Milan or next weekend in the Premier League, if that's when he decides to start to make the rotations?
I think the conversation revolves more around substitutions than it does around rotation right now. We've been subbing the front line. We've been subbing the back fullbacks. I think that's going to happen again, assuming we get out to a good start. I mean, we get up 2-3-0, 2-1, 3-1, 60 minutes to go. We're going to see mass substitutions. I think Tsimikas in for a Robo makes sense. I think, the front line, Bradley coming in for Trent. We've been doing that already. So I don't even think that these players other than the midfield have gotten like a full 90 minutes. So we were almost already kind of preparing ourselves for this from the previous 3 games by just kind of having these substitutions. So I fully anticipate Milan is going to be very similar to today's lineup and next Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure what day that is, but I think that's going to be very similar. I think Kazi mentioned it. I think the West Ham game on next Thursday is is it next Wednesday? Right. Next Wednesday, yeah, is the obvious game to just really roll over the team and just substitute everybody. That's my personal opinion. I think it makes sense. I think also with a new coach, you want to make sure that you get your team out. And Kazi also mentioned that Arsenal, we don't know what Arsenal's doing, but we do know they're hurt in the midfield. They are ripe for the picking tomorrow. Tottenham could really, really get them tomorrow. If they're not going to beat Arsenal tomorrow, when are they going to beat them? Right? Arsenal, man for man, is a better team, but Tottenham, as we know, is a blitzkrieg type of team, very Kloppish style with the attack. But I think the lineups are going to be very similar, if not exactly the same, for Tuesday and then again next weekend.
Kazi, let's go to today's match. Let's just quickly talk about Forest. We mentioned Chris Wood earlier, the direct style. We know what he is, right? He's I think people don't give him enough credit. Statistically, his finishing since he was at Newcastle and even when he was in Burnley, his finishing at the Premier League level is really, really good. Yeah. It's that the teams he plays for don't create enough chances for him. I'm not saying he belongs a big level step up, but I think if he played at West Ham with Jared Bowen, he'd score a bunch of poachers' goals because he'd have power players and Kudus and Bowen on both sides kind of sending crosses in. But outside of Bowen, and I guess maybe Gibbs White, is there anywhere else here that you see that they need to either focus on? They're not playing one of their more attack-minded sides. They're not playing This doesn't look like a team that's set up really to even counterattack, which is odd if you're going to play a low block. Is this Nuno showing up playing for a 0-0 draw or to steal a 1-0?
I'm very, very surprised by the Forest team. For people who, don't do a lot of Forest here who are listening in here, they're playing 5 centre mids, which is absolutely fucking ludicrous. So, if any more fucking lower, they're going to be sitting on the cop. So, you've got Ward-Prowse there. I think he'll probably go on the right. Yates will probably go on the 10. Gibbs White probably go off the left. And then Anderson and Dominguez will probably play like 2 holding sitters, like a 4-2-3-1. But with no outlet, like an Adui or an Elanga, even Awonyi as a great outlet. I think I'm the biggest Awonyi fan in the world in terms of what he does. It's a mad team. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to swarm Liverpool in midfield. Let's get it right. Liverpool in part of these football matches that we have won, we have had like a little sticky 20 minutes in midfield. Before we started a bit sticky against United in the first 15, 20 in midfield, and then we got grips to it. So they're probably thinking if we get numbers around midfield, then we can see if we can overload Gravenberch and McAllister and stuff like that in midfield and try and pick them off that way. The one thing I'd say, there's not a lot of pace to get out. Gibbs White's quick, but I wouldn't say he's rapid. I wouldn't say he's like fucking, a level of quickness where it just should be afraid for Kanate. I'll put Kanate up against anyone, any kind of forward in the world. I think Kanate could catch anyone in a running race. He's that quick. So It's interesting. The Wood one's interesting. The Wood's got a fucking lot of hard work to do. I think we all guessed that anyway. But that's why I thought he would have done Awoniyi. I really thought he would have done him because of his outlet alone and his pace. I think Awoniyi's a lot quicker on the turn than Chris Wood. So it's an interesting scene that he's went for there, fella. But let's get it right. Nuno's had 2 weeks to look at Liverpool. That's the other thing. People forget that, by the way. You know, what's Nuno's been doing for 2 weeks? He's been watching Liverpool because that's his next fucking game. Do you know what I mean? So he's maybe seen a bit of a weakness in Liverpool. So it's interesting. It is interesting. I don't know how they're going to get out here, fella. Ward-Prowse to fucking Chris Wood feels like the most absolute lower bar Premier League goal of all time.
This is absolutely a match you do not want to take cheap fouls inside your half and allow Ward-Prowse to keep throwing the ball into the box. Exactly. Don't give away weak corners, right? Like I think this is going to be a very interesting one for me because it feels like the biggest test yet, not from a playing standpoint, even though because there are a lot. I mean, Ipswich much better than United. No, I'm just kidding. The biggest test in this is that I think this is the first team that's absolutely going to set up in the Burnley style low block. And I think we're going to see how Slot handles this one because you didn't see the low block that much against Ipswich. Obviously, they had the good first half and then they tried to play with us in the second half. That was their downfall. I just feel like Brentford never really got going. We scored early. In this one, I feel like they're coming in planning to play that way. I could see them trying to win the coin toss and spinning us around and making us go at the top end first half if they can. Before we get into any of the predictions, John, for you, who is this game most important for? It's weird when you don't have rotation. Normally it's like, oh, Jones is getting his shot today. Or is this match today really about Robertson building on what was a really good kind of Manchester United match and that Brentford match before it? Is it Trent continuing to build on what was a really confident building international break for him? Like, where do you see today's match and where do you see it being won?
I'll probably go left field and say Konate because he wasn't even slated to come in first choice, first game of the season, and that kind of changed on a dime. And to be fair to him, since he's come in, he's been pretty flawless, I would say. Like a few shaky moments, like not even one shaky moment I could name. And this is the kind of game that we bought him for. Like big set piece threats, him just overpowering or outrunning someone, just pure winning the pure physical battle. So if he drops a 7 or an 8 out of 10, that right-sided center back spot for him is pretty much nailed on, which is exactly what we bought him for. So he's the guy that I'm looking forward to kind of giving me more of the same. Because listen, last year, the way he ended last year was somewhat of a disappointment for me. So this year, he was one of my players coming in that kind of had to give a pretty good season. Kind of I wouldn't say make or break, but sort of in that ballpark. So yeah, it's Konate for me.
John's far too nice, isn't he, Gally? What we want to say is that he was fucking shit. Not that he was kind of a disappointment. No, he was fucking crap.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Hey, you don't pull any punches with me and Kazi. I think I see sometimes in the comments, I'm not sure Gally actually likes this team because I'm as critical as anyone. But I feel like if you're not critical, then you can't be overly praised and supportive when they're great. Because then people are like, basically, you're Sir Z. You just wear them rosy red glasses, and we love you, brother. So let's go to the guy in those rosy red glasses. And I'll ask you this, because if I ask anyone else it, I might get an honest answer. No, I'm just kidding. There was a little bit of murmur and a little bit of talk about the Anfield crowd being a little quieter than normal during the Brentford match, maybe not understanding kind of the long possession play, not having that same energy. How important, I think it was overblown, and I think it was more hype-driven, because I think it's easy for writers to say something isn't as good when you're trying to compare it to something that was magic for 9 years, and it's going to be different. How important is it, though, that especially if Forrest does sit back, and it does take a little bit to get going. How important is it that the Anfield crowd is up today behind the lads and really pulling energy into these guys, knowing, to Kazi's point, 7 matches in 22 days. You're going to need your supporters along the way there to help you get across the line in some of them. Shouldn't be the first one, in my opinion, but how important are they today for you?
I think they're important, but I don't think they're important as much as how Klopp needed the supporters to back the team last season. I think Slot is very different. He's like really no nonsense, like no excuses, like you saw the 12:30 kickoff thing. Like he really doesn't care. He just wants his team they're very impersonal in that sense, from what I've seen. And I think with the crowd against the Brentford game, like just like us, it's like adapting to this new system. Like, wait, we have the ball and we're like keeping the ball. We're not, we're not attacking like we did with Mane, Firmino, and Salah. Like, I think it's the supporters need to adapt to the team like we do, and they just have to find new ways of like supporting us, I guess, and supporting the team. Whereas Klopp was obviously all full of energy and so forth, but there are times where in that Brentford game we were passive, like we had the ball, but it was just like I don't think Slot really cares about the crowd getting behind us or not, as long as the players are doing their job and we win the game, and that's and I think that's what it seems like anyway.
Like, I want to follow on from that, right? Because this is really annoying me, and I think for the Liverpool fans who are listening here, stop letting people from Manchester or who play for Manchester United have a fucking opinion on our football club and let it fucking affect you. The fucking atmosphere against Brentford was absolutely fine. I don't know where it all came from. We were the Sunday 4:00 kickoff playing against Brentford at home, where they had no fucking kicks of the ball, and Liverpool just controlled the game. We had a lovely fucking Sunday. Stop letting people who play for Manchester United having a fucking opinion on our footy club. They're here to fucking bring you down. That's what they're there for. I watched the overlap a couple of days ago with Paul Scholes on it, and he's going, I don't think Arne Slot fancies Trent Alexander-Arnold at all.
I was just going to bring it up.
They're here to get in your fucking head. Just stop it. It's the fucking second game of the season against Brentford at home in August. What do you want? A Barcelona 4-0 atmosphere? Are you fucking mad? There was no qualms at all. There was no fucking... They had nothing all game for you. Liverpool controlled it. I had a lovely little Sunday. I don't know about you guys, but I fucking enjoyed watching the Reds that day. And I thought the atmosphere was fine. Stop letting these people have an opinion on our club. It's our fucking football club and not theirs. There you go.
You're spot on, Kazi. I was gonna come on. I wanted to get on the morning show because I saw the Paul Scholes thing, and it just irritated me to no end. Him sitting there saying the manager's yelling. Anyone who's watched Arne Slot, he yells the entire match. He's like Mikel Arteta in the technical area. He's yelling at every player. He's yelling at Salah 4 feet away from him. Like, he's yelling at every single player on the pitch. So the idea that he hates Trent because he sends long diagonal cross balls and because he's subbing him off in the 70th minute, if you look at his record, he subs off his wingers and his wide fullbacks in every single match his whole career. That's who he uses his subs for, because that's who he asks to do the most work. I just feel like it's just a ridiculous take on that one. I'm with you 100%. Before we get here to our predictions, this has been something that has rolled through the chat by about 100 different people for the entire 4 years that we've been doing these post-match and YouTube shows. I feel like there is no player at Liverpool Football Club that splits the opinion more than one Scouser, Curtis Jones. So Richard, our friend, jumps in with, I want Jones to be good at LFC. I think Jones will go on loan or be sold. I don't think isn't.
Can I just leave? Can I just leave right now?
PM standard. So I'm going to ask you, Salim, because you are our newest member and it is your time. And you can give your real opinion, but from the faces on our screen, I think you know where we may roll. Are you a Curtis Jones in or a Curtis Jones out guy? Because there feels like there is no middle ground for the young man, no matter how much he's improved over the time he's been at this club, playing in the first team setup.
I mean, as a squad player, he's fine. I don't think he's a starter for us, like, consistently. He's homegrown, so that counts for something, right? I think Curtis Jones is a good player. He's just not like jumps off the page or jumps off the screen, right? He maybe dribbles a little bit too much, but overall he's okay. I mean, I'm indifferent really of Curtis Jones. He doesn't make Liverpool tick, so I don't really care if he stays or goes. I think he's okay. If he goes, it's not going to break my heart, But I think at the end of the day, he's an academy graduate. That's important to the way we do things and bringing people up. If he takes another jump, I mean, he's still young. He could make another jump, and that could be beneficial to us. But I think overall, it's blah. I mean, okay, great if he stays. He's not going to start, and if he goes, I'm okay with it. It's not the end of the world.
Well, you and Kazi definitely need to do a show at some point because that'll be some outstanding fireworks. I was a could go, can stay, was blah. I felt 2 seasons ago he was the best midfielder down the stretch, helped carry us into Champions League over those 10, 11 matches. The only time he ever got 10 or 11 starts in a row, which is what we always say to Kazi's point earlier. You let Gravenberch start 3 matches in a row, and he earned himself a position in the side. I do think Klopp at times played him a little bit out of position, and he asked him to do things that it wasn't great for him. I actually think this tactics and this midfield helps him, and I think he could be really good in it. I do think sometimes he dribbles one too many times. He thinks a little bit too much on the ball. But the biggest issue with Curtis Jones with me is he just doesn't stay fit long enough. And I think, steal a line from American sports coaches sometimes, sometimes the greatest ability is availability.
Yeah.
And he very rarely has that. And I think when you don't have that, you allow for the hyperbole and you allow for the hypercritical, swings of how people see you. But speaking of swings, let's get into the predictions. People have been asking for them since the first 5 minutes of this program. I will make one comment. Chiesa's not on the bench again, but the manager did mention yesterday that he just doesn't feel that he's actually at full fitness levels yet, and they want to make sure that they're protecting against an injury. He hasn't played a lot of football over the years. I know he played 33 matches last year, many from the subs bench. I'm fine with that. I could see him getting his first appearance at AC Milan, which makes a lot of sense. It's in Italy against a club he knows, a stadium he understands, a country he gets. So I hope it works out and we get to see Chiesa midweek. But as always, let's do our predictions. Give me a score line if you want to be so inclined. Tell me who you think will score. And if you hit it, well, I'll make Matu send you an American Scouser gift. Let's start with you, Salim. It's your first day on the show. Let's see that bold prediction. What is your scoreline?
Yeah, Wednesday I predicted 3-1. I think it's a 3-1 game. I think they'll get. We've had 3 consecutive clean sheets. Pretty kind of fortunate against Manchester United. To get a clean sheet. But I think 3-1 is the outcome. I know the low block maybe kind of feels more like a 1-0, 2-0 type of game. I just think at some point we're gonna break through, and once the first goal comes, it's almost like a floodgate kind of opens. They're gonna have to open up at some point, especially if we get an early goal. So that's what I'm predicting. I think an early goal kind of gets us ahead. 3-1 is my prediction. As far as people who score, Salah's probably minus 110 to score. Maybe even more, minus 150. So I'd say Salah. I would say Diaz has been on a nice run of form, but I'd see Jota getting on the score sheet, and hopefully one of our midfielders puts one away today. So 3-1, Salah, Jota, and a midfielder. I'm not sure which one.
2 appearances, and the guy realized if you really want in the good graces, just go with the automatic Timuchin special on your first prediction, and you know that you're good to go. John, and I'm not going to read any of the ones coming in. I'm just going to start firing them up on the screen because we are getting the predictions coming hot and heavy in the comments section. Thank you all very much for that. John, go ahead. Give us your score line. Give us who you think ends up the goal scorers if you want to.
Yeah, last Wednesday I went with a 2-0. I'm going with a 3-0 now, seeing how Forest is kind of lining up. I think we will dissect them if they're going to be sitting back. Obviously, this is like famous last words, right? But in terms of scorers, since I captained him on my fantasy team, look at me giving a shit about my fantasy team, Gally. You should be proud. Salah scores 2, and then we got Jota for the 3rd. So a brace for Mo and 1 for Jota.
All righty, Sir Z, where are you rolling with this one? How you see it finishing?
Inshallah, see 4-0, Salah 2, Jota 1, Nunes 1.
4-0.
I hope you're right.
I just want you to know, so it never ends. There are times where Kazi will say, I think we smash them 5-0, and Sir Z says 7-0. Like he basically is the guy. He's the guy in Price is Right who bets $1 more than the highest bid, no matter what it is. So Kazi, where do you have this one ending? What do you see for the result? And of course, the goal scorers, if you got one for me.
I think it's going to be I think we'll win 3-0, but I think it'll be hard. I think the first half an hour we won't score. We'll score between probably the first 35, 45. We'll go in 1-0 and then just probably beat them in the second half. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be half an hour. I think Liverpool are going to figure it out a little bit on what they're doing. And I think when we do figure it out, I think that it's when Liverpool kind of come into their own kind of thing. So yeah, 3-0 Liverpool. I'll go Salah 2 and Trent 1, because I do think that it might be like the first goal might be like a weird one, like a free kick or
corner
like
kick,
yard or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like that one that you wouldn't expect kind of thing. So I'll say Trent.
I like the Trent shout, especially if you look at like the heat maps of where he's been popping up in the attacking half. He's getting back into those wide positions where he's both creating, but also he's had 2 or 3 opportunities where if they find him on the break, he's right there. And I think Trent has a good shot to score today, not just because he's on my fantasy team, but because I think he's in really good form. And I do think he's a confidence player as well. You can see it in Trent's face when he's feeling his football, when he's loving what he's doing. And I think going off to England in the first international break after Southgate leaves and getting 2 Man of the Match awards after basically being a scapegoat for 6 years to why they didn't win major tournaments because they couldn't figure out how to use them. And then Lee Carlisle goes, I'll figure out how to use them. Take your most talented player, give him the ball. It works really well. Yep. I think Trent does big today. I think Salah is on the score sheet. I do think Jota breaks the duck today. I think 3-0. I'll go with you, Kazi. I'll go Trent, Mo, and Jota. And I think Mo and Trent also pick up an assist or 2 themselves. I think Mo is in some of the finest form we've seen him in a long, long time, especially to start a season. I think he wants to stay within touching distance of Haaland. I think he has like real mindsets of 20, 30 league goals again this year and getting back to being, the most overlooked, super talented player in the world. Just how that guy's stats from last year couldn't get him even in the top 10 of the Ballon d'Or just shows you that there's just a ridiculous bias against the talent. But that's a conversation for a morning show or another program. I want to thank all of the viewers this morning who jumped in, everyone who got in with their comments, anyone who has joined our Discord channel, of course, all the people who watched throughout the week. We will be back post-match, probably 10, 15 minutes after the final whistle to review what is another big Liverpool victory. If you haven't already, what the hell's wrong with you? Get over to the YouTube channel, give that thing a subscribe, smash the like button, hit all the things except for the one with the thumb going down. And most importantly, tune back in after the match so we can review another victory. And of course, tune in Monday morning to Tamuchin and the Polish Prince as they go through all the morning headlines. We will have some match day shows on Tuesday for the Champions League, I'm sure. So we will get at it, folks. Really appreciate all of you today. And any final words from anybody on the set before we kick this thing off, refresh the coffees, and settle in for another win?
Go Reds.
Enjoy the game.
All right, boys. Up the Reds and have a great week.